Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scott's Selections here for Monday, December 2nd. Before we get into today's play of the day, quick recap of what happened yesterday. We ended up picking up an easy winner with the Clippers at minus 12 as they were able to score 150 points as they ended up coasting to a 20-something point victory. Wasn't really much to talk about. First quarter was pretty close. Clippers won a run early in the second, and then it was pretty much over from that point forward. The Wizards continue to play no defense whatsoever in the NBA. And the Clippers, whenever Kawhi Leonard and Paul George play, they've looked basically unstoppable. Harrell was great once again off the bench, as I thought he would be, since Wagner was out for Washington, so they were a little bit short on big men. And Harrell had 20-something and 13 through like three quarters. So the game was pretty much over. Fourth quarter was just a formality, and we ended up picking up a nice, easy winner. But for Monday, there are a decent amount of games going on in college basketball and the NBA, but the play of the day is going to be on the NFL matchup between the Minnesota Vikings and the Seattle Seahawks, and we actually like the Seahawks here, available at minus 2.5 on PointsBet, and that is available at minus 115 on PointsBet, and that will be the play of the day. Now, the main reasons why we like this spot here for Seattle are based twofold. One, I just don't like Kirk Cousins in primetime games. I know that people think the narrative is dead because they beat the Cowboys in Dallas earlier this year on Sunday Night Football. I think it's been proven that the Cowboys aren't exactly the best football team in the world, and I think the Cowboys are just completely overrated based on reputation alone. So yes, Kirk Cousins led the Vikings to a victory against the Cowboys, but I don't think it was that impressive of a win as people thought it was maybe a month or two ago. As the Cowboys, they're still going to win the NFC East because the Eagles are terrible, but as a whole, the Cowboys are definitely not a great team. And I think people blew Cousins winning that game out of proportion. Now they have to travel to Seattle to take on Russell Wilson and the 9-2 Seattle Seahawks. And the Seahawks will have an extra chip on their shoulder since San Francisco lost to Baltimore, which means that if Seattle is able to win this game, they will be in first place in the NFC West due to the head-to-head tiebreak. So this game actually means a lot to Seattle to gain some ground on San Francisco. Minnesota could get themselves back into a tie for first with the Green Bay Packers. But for this game itself, Minnesota has been pretty underwhelming on the road. I know that they're 8-3 overall. They're 5-0 at home, and they're 3-3 on the road. So whenever they're not playing in Minnesota, they've really been somewhat average, if not underwhelming, to say the least. Same thing with Seattle, though. Seattle's 3-2 at home. They're 9-2 overall, which means they're 6-0 on the road. But Seattle is always known for having one of the best home field advantages in all of football, and it will be going extra crazy on Monday night. I think Cousins will struggle. I think Wilson will do what he normally does. He'll make stuff up, he'll improvise, and I think he'll throw for 2 or 3 touchdowns. Cousins, I think he'll have some issues based on the fact that Adam Thielen will be out once again. I know he hasn't played the last couple of weeks, but he's still a very solid receiver. And without him being in the lineup, I mean, if Seattle's able to pressure Cousins and guard Diggs, they could even send an extra person to guard Diggs. I just don't think there's enough weapons in the passing game for the Vikings. They could ground the ball. They could ground and pound with Dalvin Cook and even Madison off the bench. But as a whole, you need somebody besides Diggs who can potentially stretch the defense. And Thielen being out, I think, is a pretty big deal. Other injury news, Harrison Smith, phenomenal safety. He's questionable. I personally think he's going to play, but nobody really knows. Linval Joseph is questionable, solid defensive tackle. And for the Seahawks, you have Clowney who's questionable, and you have a couple of defensive tackles who are questionable. But overall, I think 2.5 is kind of a gift. I think Seattle will win this game by at least 3 points. This game could be close, but I definitely think Wilson will make the plays down the stretch, as Minnesota's defense has definitely not been great so far this season. I think Wilson should be able to pick them apart, at least temporarily, for a couple of touchdowns. So the play of the day will be on the Seattle Seahawks minus 2.5, which is available on PointsBet at minus 2.5 at minus 115. So other than that, though, looking at the rest of the betting card here, I'll start out with the NBA. I mean, there's a couple of games here that are somewhat interesting until you actually look at the spread. Like, I like the Bucks to win the game against the Knicks, to win pretty handily. Do I really want to lay 16.5 with Milwaukee at home? Probably not. I mean, I'm not really sure. That game's kind of a toss-up to me. But I would have to lean to Milwaukee, as I just think that the Knicks are just awful. And Milwaukee's coming in off a 40-point win against Charlotte. I think Milwaukee will continue to smack this team. I'll lean to Milwaukee. Other than that, lean to the Pacers minus 9.5. The number seems high, but the spot itself is really good. Memphis has officially announced that John Morant, star rookie, will be out for a couple of weeks due to back spasms. But Memphis was able to win yesterday against Minnesota, which means they are playing the second end of a back-to-back. And Indiana was in the middle of a winning streak. They ended up losing in heartbreaking fashion to the 76ers in their last game. But now they travel on the road to face a Grizzlies team that will be without its best player. Jonas Valanciunas also might not play for the Grizzlies, and the Grizzlies are also playing the second game in 48 hours, so it's going to be very tough for them. And I think that Indiana should be able to get the job done here. Lean to Indiana minus 9.5. Other than that, though, looking at the rest of the card here, lean to Phoenix minus 4.5. Phoenix hasn't played well lately, but Charlotte, I think, has finally started to implode. They've been performing relatively well for about a month, and I thought they'd have one of the worst records in the entire league. They're starting to fall back down to earth where they're going to finish in the basement. I think Phoenix should be able to win this game by around 7 points or so. Lean to Phoenix on that one. Now talking about college basketball, looking at the card briefly. Not that many great games to talk about, if I'm being completely honest here. I would lean to the under 120. What do I like? The under 124.5 between Kansas State and Florida A&M. Florida A&M plays at one of the slowest paces in the entire country. Kansas State is not that far behind them, as Kansas State offensively has looked like an absolute mess. Defensively, they're still really solid. I think this game should turn into a rock fight. I think Kansas State will win pretty handily, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Florida A&M score somewhere in the realm of 50 points. I think Kansas State should win this game. I think they should win this game by, I don't know, like 68 to like 52 maybe. I think this game will go under, so I'll lean to Kansas State on that one. Other than that, looking at the rest of the card here, I originally liked the under in the Washington-South Dakota game, and I wrote an article about that for Winners and Whiners last night, so if you wanted to check that out, you can. But I like the under. That was at 141.5. It's all the way down to 136.5, so that I feel like the value on that's definitely kind of gone. If you still want the under, though, I think the first half under makes a lot of sense. Washington, with its zone defense, will throw South Dakota for a loop in the first 20 minutes of the game. I think that is definitely a side you could look for. But overall, lean to the under in that game, but I'm definitely not as confident in it as I was last night. Looking at some of the other matchups here, I don't really like anything else. I think that pretty much sums up everything that I actually like on today's card. So once again, play of the day will be on the Seattle Seahawks minus 2.5, which is available on PointsBet at minus 115. Other than that, that's going to be the installment of Scott's Selections here for Monday, December 2nd, and good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.